Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Steve with the Interrupted Podcast, and I'm here to interrupt your day. It is my desire that these conversations that I'm able to have with these incredible people will help you ask bigger and deeper questions about your own life and give you the resources and show you that you have the capacity to overcome difficult situations that come by way of interruptions each and every day in our lives, whether they are life-shaking at the core interruptions or seemingly frustrating incidents that happen during the course of your day. Helping you have the correct perspective and attitude and giving you the tools is my desire. And so by having these conversations, I do trust that you'll have some takeaways, just a couple points with each and every conversation that help you attack life and just crush your goals that you have set before you. Now, today, this conversation is not going to disappoint. It's a conversation with Brian Murphy. He was a lieutenant with the Oak Creek Police Department, and back in August of 2012, he responded to an active killer situation, and he shares that story. He was shot over 15 times during that incident and has lived to tell that story. And I think what I want to highlight most in this conversation is the fact that everything that led up to that moment in time is what prepared Brian so well, or what I should say, his initiative and intentionality in how he attacked life and prepared for life. I believe after talking to him is what helped him stay the course during the event and then post-event. He's doing so much great work for so many people, whether it's out speaking to groups, helping different agencies, police departments. There's so much to be gained, but he's an incredible man. I have been talking about him for several years in some of the trainings that I put on, and it was a real honor to sit down and actually be able to speak to him. He is a veteran of the Marine Corps. He served back in the 80s, and he was also a security officer to the United Nations. He then, once he left the military, he went into law enforcement. Back in the 90s, he was in Jefferson, Wisconsin, and started at the sheriff's department there. And then he went to the Oak Creek Police Department, where he moved through the ranks. He was able to lead a number of men. I believe they benefited so much from his leadership. He was a member of the emergency response unit, and he was an entry team leader for what would be their SWAT teams during that time. So he just has so much knowledge and experience in difficult circumstances. And he has given so much. He has just given his life for service of the nation, service of his community. He's been recognized for a number of things that he did, and in particularly that fateful day in August where he had to respond and run towards the gunfire. He was recognized in 2013 with the Oak Creek Police Department Purple Heart. In 2013 with the Oak Creek Police Medal of Valor. In 2013, he was the Wisconsin Association of SWAT Personnel Officer of the Year. In 2014, he received the Congressional Badge of Bravery. And in 2015, he did receive the Presidential Public Safety Medal of Valor. And so just an accomplished man, and he has so much wisdom and insight, and I'm very fortunate to be able to bring this conversation to you. Before we get into that, I just want to pause for a moment and say thank you to all of you that have gone out and purchased the new Interrupted t-shirts, the flag tee that we have. It is live on the Interrupted store, which you can go to at interruptme.org. There are 3 different shirts up there. We're going to be adding to the inventory. We're going to have some other shirts and hats coming down the way. So be sure to go to our website, which is our main landing page. You can find everything you want to know about the podcast, and you can shop. The reason I put those shirts up there is that is a way that you can help the show. If you tune in with each show that drops and listen, receive some benefit, this is a way that you can give back to the show, help with some of the cost that goes into the production of a podcast and having the gear to be able to do that. I'm happy to do it and take the time to share these conversations with you. I often get asked, "Hey Steve, how can I help you out? What can I do? What can I give to their podcast?" The best way right now is just to tune tune in, listen, like, share. If you'd like to support what we're doing, go ahead, buy a t-shirt, help us get the word out about the show. The bigger we grow, it's much easier to get the guests that you really want to hear. As you send those messages over to me, I can get them on the show a lot easier with a much larger audience, obviously. Just full disclosure there. So definitely go over to the store, buy a shirt. I'll ship it right out to you, and you can be helping us out here at the Interrupted Podcast. So thank you. That will, for right now, just to conclude those announcements, and we're going to go ahead and get right into this conversation with Brian Murphy. Hey, Brian, thanks for jumping on the Interrupted Podcast, brother. It's been a joy to get to meet you and connect with you. I appreciate you taking the time today to come on the show.
No, thank you for having me, man. It's always good to talk to people in the same mindset and just hash some stuff out.
100%. I know the listeners are going to get an incredible amount of value. They have already heard, as the airing of this, I'll give a little bit overview of kind of what our conversation is going to be, but I'm really excited to get into this. I didn't share this with you in our lead-up conversation here, but man, your story really hits home for me because I was in the academy to become a law enforcement officer in 2012. And so as I transitioned out of teaching and moved into law enforcement, I remember a very pointed conversation from mentors and people in the profession I look up to that your story obviously shook the entire community at that time. And so it just is resounding. And then even leading up to in 2015, I started doing the alert trainings around civilian training for active shooter events. And at that time, your story was always highlighted. And it was a point that I always even struggled with. I'd get emotional at the moment that I had to even share 3 sentences of your story, because what it means to have the will to live and survive, and that capacity is in each and every person. And when you tell that to a civilian and you share just some of the statistics and facts from the incident you were involved in, there's something that always changed in the participants of those trainings and became very real to them. So for me to have this opportunity to sit down with you, it's a real honor, sir. You've had an impact on my career and on my life even before our conversation today. So I just wanted you to know that, and look forward to sharing your story here on the show.
I appreciate it. There's a thing involved, obviously, with the temple, and the only female to die. Her son now is going through the academy, which it was funny. He got out. He was looking at law enforcement when the incident happened, and then he was doing college for a little bit. And then he gives me a holler, and he's like, Brian, I don't want to do this anymore, school. And he goes, so I joined the Marines. And I'm like, all right, I was in the Marines. He just got out late last year. And then
right on.
Next thing I know, he's like, hey, Brian, can you get me a vest? You need a vest for? And he goes, I'm going to be in the academy. So regardless of what happens, it's how you turn things for the better. And Kamal, to me, is like a shining example of taking a horrible situation and using it for his own good,
Man, 100%. Well, that's exactly the type of perspective that I only pray that these conversations lead to for the audience out there as they hear what we're about to talk about today. But would you take it back just a little bit for us and give us some context before we get into some of that part of your story? Tell us a little bit about maybe where you grew up and what kind of influences you had on your life to help shape some of your worldview. And I realize that changes over time, but what were you like as a young man, and your personality and whatnot?
So I was growing up. I grew up in Brooklyn. I would say probably lower middle class neighborhood, all working, blue collar workers. For the most part, up until my junior year in high school, I was pretty much the smallest guy in the class.
Okay.
If I wasn't I was in the small three, not even top three, the small three. I, but I was always quick with my mouth. I but just tried to find humor and everything. So yeah, growing up, I mean, to me, I always looked up to, everybody looks up to their own family members first, I think, as your jump off point. And for me, it was always my mom.
Hmm.
She just worked hard. She always took the time to talk to you, to nurture you, and to truly look at you as an individual. So I learned a ton from her. And later on in my life, she became even more so as far as resiliency goes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, growing up that way, I did okay in high school. I was politely asked to leave my first high school, went to my second one, where I just worked. I got my stuff done, and
Okay.
I actually missed graduating early because of gym, if you can believe that. They made me
Because of
do an
Jim.
extra
All right.
half a year for a gym class. And from there, I went in the Marines. My first duty station was out in California. Major influence there was my CO, Major Miller. On his desk, right, when you first got stationary, had all new people come in who talked to you for a bit. And I'm looking on his desk. I worked in the brig, by the way.
Okay.
So he has a ball and chain attached to the desk. That was pretty slick.
There you go.
I'm looking at his, right on the very front of his desk, it shows all the ranks he held. So it was, BFC, Lance, Corporal, Sergeant, First Lieutenant, second Lieutenant, First Lieutenant, Sergeant, Captain, Staff Sergeant. And I had to ask him, I'm like, what happened? And it was all Vietnam.
Okay.
Where he was field promoted. And then they brought in a new lieutenant and he punched him. So he got knocked back down, and just that's the way the guy was. But what struck me was no matter where he was in the brig, he took the time to talk to people, not just the guards, but convicts. But these were guys, outside prison and military prison is no different. We have thieves, rapists, murderers. We got, it's just a slice of society, but always and never back down, never showed fear, but would sit directly with somebody and instead of making them stand at attention, he'd say, sit down, sit in the bunk. And he would bring a chair with him and talk. And you're like, man, that's crazy. I mean, CO of an battalion. So he instilled in us, you had to be firm, fair, and professional, always. And consistency was the key.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my guy there. I went on embassy duty. I was in Afghanistan back when the Russians were there, back in 82, 83.
Okay.
So I met a bunch of guys who work for a bunch of different governmental organizations that have usually 3 letters. All those guys were good. And everybody always said, man, you have to go to college. You got to do things. You're too smart to just sit. Mm-hmm. Long story short, I got out of the service, went to work at the UN 2 weeks after I got out. Enjoyed that, met tons of people from all over the world. And there again, it goes back to, you realize, I don't care where you come from, the problems are the same. No matter what part of the globe you are, everybody's, how do I take care of my family? How do I feed my family? What am I doing for work? All these things. So that was great. And then moved out to Wisconsin and stayed in law enforcement, got on Oak Creek, worked my way up to lieutenant. I was a SWAT guy. I was a CSI guy, drugs. I tried to stick my hand in everything because, we didn't have a huge department. I was 58, sworn at the time.
Okay.
I always felt, it's in your own benefit to know as many things as possible.
Yeah.
So it's going to make you better, make your job better, and make it more interesting,
Yeah, 100%. What was your feeling around like tactics when you were even in the Marine Corps? Were you somebody that was really seeking out the best training, and was that your mindset, or was it
Yeah.
an evolution, or in the profession and even just mindset of even civilians? What was your headspace around just preparedness and understanding about the evil that existed in the world?
Well, it was funny at the time. One of the guys that I was stationed with, Brian, wound up getting stationed in Beirut
Okay.
at the embassy there, and then they blew the embassy up.
Yeah.
Brian got, he was in the embassy, and he actually got blown out of his rack into a wall, and he didn't get great injuries, but I looked at that and I'm like, man, this thing is global. It's everywhere. And the thing about embassy duties, you don't really get to pick your first station. They pick it for you. So, but if when you look at embassy duty, it was a different breed altogether, because it was just like when we were in Afghanistan, there's only 6 of us.
Okay.
And geez, I remember being there, and all of a sudden we got 70,000 people rocking the gate out in front, wanting to burn the embassy down. This was right after, Iran was 79.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're looking at this and you're looking up in the air. I remember being on top of the embassy. I got 38 special with 18 rounds, and I have an 870p shotgun.
Oh man, you're ready.
So I'm looking up, and there's 3 mega helicopters with rocket pods. They're so close. Where I'm eyeballing the pilot, and we're just looking at each other. And I flipped the guy off because I'm like, and he laughed. But, it was one of those things that you realize, you know what? And one of the guys I was stationed with there, we were tasked with, if indeed the embassy fell, that there was equipment that needed to get destroyed. We were going to be there. They already started pulling us back. They were doing a thing called a drag and burn, which means they were taking all the classified info and burning it just in case we did get taken over.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, it didn't happen. But man, that was the thing. I was like, this is what I'm here for. This is what,
Okay.
There's people here. I have no idea what's going to happen. So you have to keep your wits about you. And to me, it was kind of exciting.
Yeah.
This is great. Until then the rounds start coming months later. Then you're like, well, this kind of sucks with me and my 38 getting shot at with,
you don't want to be undergunned in that situation.
No, and there was no way. You're in the middle of nowhere, really. Afghanistan we were thousands of miles away from any help. So we would have been just out of luck completely had things went south.
Yeah. Wow. Well, did those experiences, at that time, was it pretty solidified that, hey, I am going to be getting out of the Marine Corps, and you were like hard charging towards a law enforcement career, or was it up in the air at that time?
It was actually up in the air. So when I was getting out, they want you to stay, obviously. And if they would have given me a better destination, then I would have stayed for at least for one more another stint. So it would have been another 18 months, 2 years. But they wanted me to stay. They wanted me to go to Europe, and I didn't want to go to Europe. I wanted to go to either South America or stay in Asia.
Okay.
And then they were like, okay, we can't do that. And I'm like, good. Then it was amicable. It was not anything hard. And I was like, all right. And again, I went home, and, I had actually been overseas for 3 years straight. So I hadn't seen my family. I hadn't seen the U.S. in 3 years.
Okay.
I remember coming home, and My parents met me at the airport. My mom latched on and would not let go of me the whole time, man. It was funny, and I didn't realize how much, uh, she had missed me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds weird, but that's 3 years of being, 21 to 24, and you didn't see anybody in your family. And my dad was like, you should take, like a couple of months off and figure out what you want to do. And I was like, we'll see. But I was used to working.
Uh-huh.
My sister's, it was weird. My sister's boss, his brother worked at the UN. And so that was right in the beginning of August. And it's like the General Assembly starts in September, and that's massive. So they hire a ton of temp people. And I was like, I'll go try that for a little while. And you are on the UN grounds, you are the police force. NYPD, the fire department, nobody can come on unless they're invited. So that was, and really to me, it was just a big embassy. It wasn't that much different from what I had been doing.
Yeah.
You did get to see a lot of high power people. I bodyguarded Maggie Thatcher, Gorbachev, Bush, Bush one, just a bunch of those people. And then when I say that, it was just taking them all around the building. You still with Secret Service, but just getting to see those people was awesome. And I think the thing that, my best story out of there was Bush. So when the first Bush was president, he used to be the ambassador to the UN back in the 70s.
Yes, sir.
So he comes back and he blew everybody out of the water because he remembered every single person.
Really? Wow.
It was scary. He walked through the building. Sally, how are you? How are the kids? How's little John? He's got to be big. And you could see on their face, like just being stunned that the president of the United States remembered them from, 15, 18 years ago. And you looked at that and you're like, how many people does this guy meet in his political career? And and not just one, everywhere he went, it was, hey, this guy, that guy, and other countries. It was astonishing.
It's amazing how something that simple can show people they matter. And there's not a depth to a relationship there, but a simple gesture like that. I think it stands to, or it's worth highlighting how important things like that are, where we can be very dismissive on a daily basis, even the people that we lead or our own families, or just introducing, as we come in contact with people.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Wow. Yeah. To even leave an impact like that. But yeah, to be a young 20-year-old guy and getting to meet people of that caliber, I think that begins to build meaning in a person's life. I can't help but, now I guess people can have bad experiences as well that you could say the same thing, but
sure.
There's trying to unpack, what that actually does to a young man who's, on a career path, and you get to have an opportunity like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And again, having met guys from all over the world, and you realize that these are the same people. And what are you doing here? What made you come here? Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted that step up. Everybody wanted that little bit more. So, I worked up from just doing regular patrol stuff to I worked in the command center, and then I worked in the fire department there for a little while.
Okay.
And then I met my first wife, and we got married, and we had my daughter. I was living in Queens, and Queens at the time was, New York in general at that time was having some issues. It was pre-Giuliani. Mm-hmm. Things where it was just not fun. It was scary. I had 3 cars stolen in a year. One of the guys in my building got shot right in broad daylight. So My first wife had family out in Wisconsin, and one of the guys I was stationed with in Thailand lived in Wisconsin. So I had visited him, and I came and I was like, you know what, if you want to move there, we'll move there.
Mm-hmm.
Able to get on with having the experience that I did. I got on out in Jefferson County, which is one county, or 2 counties west of Milwaukee. I stayed there for a year, went through recruit school and all that stuff. And then, but after a year, it was much too rural.
Okay.
So then I got on at Oak Creek, which is, we border Milwaukee to the south. So it's more metropolitan-ish, huge, but it is still a city.
What was your take? I'm curious, being in the Marine Corps, going through that process and that life, and then moving over into I use it loosely, but a paramilitary structure on stateside outside of the military. What was that? Was it just an easy transition? Was it like, man, this is way different, even though there are similarities? How did it?
It was way different. It was, and I do say this. I've been back since. They actually had me come and speak to everybody, the whole security force, and things have changed just 1,000-fold from when I was there. Mm-hmm. We had guys that were, we call it, they were on a rubber gun squad. They weren't allowed to carry a weapon.
Okay.
Allowed to drink on duty. Because in Europe, everybody drinks. You have a glass of wine, but we had guys that would just get hammered.
Yeah.
Each time, and you're like, but having said that, they were dealt with in a separate way. And again, I still think in life, if you put in hard work and you show you want to get ahead and you keep yourself, squared away and prep, that's how I got the command center thing. And that's how I got, chosen to, work in the Secretary General's house and stuff like that. So, I mean, it wasn't handed to you. You still had to work, but
100%.
I had that experience, and almost all the guys who did that stuff were former embassy guys or were GSG9 and, from Germany, or, one guy, he worked at the Vatican.
Okay.
So, I mean, these are guys that, it's a very defined position. But initially it was like, this is.
Yeah. Was persistence and discipline and really committing to goals something that was easy for you, or just that was part of your personality, or was it something you wanted and had to work hard, if that makes sense, that it wasn't? I have some buddies that just like it, not that they don't have to work at it, but they just, to get up, get moving, to set a goal, to crush a goal, to find a new goal, where I find for me, it's like have to be extra intentional about following through with those things. And I want to learn from somebody, see how they do it, and then try and mirror that in a way that fits my personality. And it's this constant juggling match where some people can take a stand in what they know and what they want, and they just attack it, which is, I wouldn't say either one's wrong. It's just they're different.
I'm an attacker.
Okay.
For lack of a better term. And I think so much of that had to come from when I was growing up, always being a small guy, always being discounted. I can remember that vividly, trying out for the 7th grade basketball team, and I was in the 6th. And I tried so hard. And I remember the coach came up to my mom and he said, I would have him play, but he's just too short.
Wow.
And I remember being crushed because I couldn't control that. My height was my height, and that was that.
Right.
I tried then, no matter what was in front of me, I'm like, if this is what I want, I'm going to beat this down one way or another. And, there was, when I graduated high school, I was just messing around. I was working demolition, just gutting buildings.
Okay.
First thing in the morning, they hang a sledgehammer, you just busted walls all day and drank beer. That was it. And I'm like, I can't do this. I didn't want to keep doing that. And then I'm like, you know what I need? I need to break and totally get away. And my dad was in the Army, so I was going to do better. So I picked the Marines. And that was always my goal is I want to do one better. I don't just want to be status quo. Yeah. And no guys who are, and that's fine. If you're happy with, I mean, internally, truly happy doing that, God bless you. I mean, I can remember giving an eval to one of my guys who was an outstanding patrolman. And, you're like, where do you want to be? And he goes, on patrol.
I'm
3-5 years. And he said, patrol. I just want to do patrol work. I'm like, yeah, but you're smart. You could be a good detective and all this. And he made some great decisions, did some great work. He was SWAT officer of the year. He did, but you're like, Bob. And he's like, nope, I'm good, man. And then, so again, it goes back to where's your level of happiness? What is it that you want to do?
Yeah.
And I have found that the people that you are with will absolutely have a direct influence on you. So when I moved to Jefferson, there was 3 of us, 2 of us from the sheriff's department there and 1 from the city. And every day we carpooled out to the recruit school. Yeah. But we would quiz each other on, stuff for the test and blah, blah, blah. And I wound up I was class president. I was first academically. I was best shot. And my notebook got confiscated to use for future notebooks. And that was just because, and it had nothing to do with anybody. That was just my drive. Yeah. And I don't know why. There was one guy there who just wouldn't shut up about how great a shot he was. And those are the things and my wife knows this better than anybody. If you want me to move hard in one direction, tell me I can't. Tell me, you tell me, Stephen, how great you are at this, and I will freaking out hustle you. But if you beat me, if I give it everything and you beat me, I'm okay with that. Because I do know there's people out there who can outperform you at everything. But I always felt if I gave it everything, that's one thing.
Well, I think that's huge. That's the point of, if you're always winning, maybe your goals are the problem.
Yes. Yeah, know what? It's funny you said that, because I got passed over for promotion at my department 7 different times. And for whatever reasons, one was absolutely my fault, but there was some other ones that I was like, I don't get it. So every time I got passed over, I would knock on the chief's door and I'd be like, what is it? What next? What is it that you want? And it wasn't, because there are some times that you have in your head, well, this is the best way to be. And that's not always the right way. That's just you thinking that. Yeah. I remember when I first got promoted to lieutenant, we had a super busy shift. I was like my 3rd day. It was just one of those days, everything's happening. And I tell one of my guys, you have to go do this. And he disagreed with me. And I said, listen, man, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. I need you to do this. Well, we bring him in, and like a month later, I'm just talking. He goes, I'll never forget, because you made me do that. And I go, well, Tom, what you didn't see was this, and this. Yeah. All going on at the same time. Well, I didn't know that. And I said, I don't always have the time to explain every decision I'm making. Just trust the fact that if I'm asking you to do it, do it. Yeah. I will never make you do stuff for my personal joy. That's never going to happen. And he came back years later, and when he was going to get promoted, he says, I always remember that you said there's times that you can't explain it, but he said, you always came back after and said, hey, I know you didn't like that, but here's what was happening.
There it is. Yeah.
And there's that communication part. There's that, so much of us and them, especially law enforcement.
100%. Yeah.
And
that after action is huge.
I think that if you don't do it, shame on you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Right. And there are times where you didn't make the right decision.
Yeah.
Where you sent him and I didn't know he already had X going on or whatever. But that's where, I tried. There is no 100% success in anything. But I tried to open it to go, if there's something going on, come tell me.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, whether it's getting up in the morning, my wife breaks her back. We have an antique store and she's always up early doing sales and whatnot. I'm like, all right, you do that, I'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, communicate that. Otherwise, then things go bad.
Yeah. No, setting those expectations and making sure, like you said, there's times that, look, we can't lay this thing out perfectly, but I need you, based on our relationship, to trust me enough to execute. And then if I made the wrong call, I have to deal with that. I have to own that, but this is what I need you to do. And that's hard as a supervisor. And as now, how was the ranking structure? Like, what was the responsibilities as for your ranking structure within Oak Creek in terms of the different roles and rank you held there?
All right. So patrol is patrol, obviously.
Uh-huh.
You have separate sides, detectives, and then sergeant. So every shift has 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and 11 patrol, 12
okay.
Patrol now. But as a lieutenant, you are expected to at least be on the road about 25% of the time.
Okay.
So, and my captain was adamant about that. You are not going to lose. You're not going to ride a desk. You got to get out there. You got to, mingle. You can't tell people, you have to be busier when you never go out and see what they're doing.
Yeah, good for him. Yeah,
and I enjoyed that anyway. There were days, I'm sure you've done it, where you're like, if I read one more report, I'm absolutely gonna, hurl myself out a window because this is.
Yeah. I remember the first day I started writing too, right?
yeah. Oh man, man, you get that red pen and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, you're right.
At any rate, it's that. So that's the structure, and then within that we have 15 specialty units. So there's a drug unit, there's K9, there's SWAT, there's the evidence unit, CSI guys, there's what do you call them? The honor guard. There's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, we started SWAT in 92. I got hired in 91. So I was one of the original guys there. And I just worked my way up to being team leader, but just because you had rank did not automatically make you team leader. You had to, my assistant team leader was a patrolman.
Yeah. And you got to have the credibility. Yeah. You got to be able to follow through with those responsibilities. And I find that more even in specialized units where it's like, the rank serves as a purpose for a chain of command, but there's a level of integration within responsibility that you've got to be able to work, and there can't be those barriers. And maybe there's even an argument to say that should exist more than what it does at a patrol level, but those are all growing pains, I think, of chain of command and imperfect people trying to do difficult, complex jobs.
Right.
It's not
still
easy.
Answer to someone.
100%.
There's somebody in charge of you.
Yeah. Now, where was your department at with tactics and leading up even to the shooting itself at the temple? Were you guys on a pretty cutting edge as a department, or were you? Where did you stand in the conversation?
We were absolutely vicious, especially as compared to Southeast Wisconsin. Out-trained everybody.
Good, man. That's good to hear.
Mandatory, going back, Jesus, probably to like 93, 94. It was monthly training. So you had to qualify every month and then shoot. And then defensive tactics every month.
Man.
And then when you were on SWAT, you had to qualify twice a month. Long gun, handgun, a tougher course than what patrol did. We were the verbal judo thing. We were on top of that. Tony Blauer, his spear system.
Yep.
We're on top of that. We had so many guys who were well versed in doing everything that basically we ran in service. And so local tech colleges, and there's 35 cities, Milwaukee, they would send their guys there. But I mean, we had people who did everything.
That's refreshing to hear.
It's funny because I go up now and I talk all over the country, and I'll ask, how often you qualify? And I'm still getting once a year. And you're like, why? I get this. Because then I do the follow-up question. All right, so you qualify once a month, but how often do you shoot?
Yeah.
And it's still, but it's twice a year. And you're like, I'm missing this. So then I flip once again and I go, on your own time, how often do you shoot a month? And the answer still is, well, they don't give me ammo. I have a slide that when I just do patrol, it just says simply own it. It's your life, own it. If they don't send you to training, send your own ass to training. It's just the way it has to be. This is not a game. It's not kidding around. This is all real life. So if you're not a good communicator, get to schools that will teach you how to do it. If you're not good on the ground, freaking go. Just pay. Sometimes you gotta spend a couple bucks, but at the end of the day, and I looked at that because waking up in the ICU, and my daughter was in Korea at the time, teaching English, and I remember waking up and my wife Ann said, should we have Erica come from Korea? And I asked her, am I going to die? And I didn't know what the answer was going to be. And she said, no. And I said, oh, okay, then no. Then a separate reason for that.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, then you realize, man, it's all fleeting. That is fleeting.
Yeah. Your
life can be gone in a snap, but never make it. I can't imagine. And I talk on top of myself, so I apologize.
No, you're fine. It's good.
But like when we train, man, you didn't want to go with me, because if we're doing groundwork, if we're doing hitting the bag work, I'm not playing, because in my head told me, if I don't do it right here, if I don't know what I'm capable of here, I'm not going to know on the street. And that's where people get scared. That's where people that lose control, is because they don't know where the end of the push is. And in truth, the end of the push, there is none, because every day is a push. Everything's a push. And unless you invite that into yourself, that says, go one more second. The kid's crying, I'm going to give that kid one more second. Okay. And then you do it. But all those little things, and that's where, I get back to my mom. I got out in the very end of July. My mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she died a little over a year from when I first got out. I watched my mom fight. She had lung cancer and brain cancer. And I went and saw her every day. She was at the hospital or she was home. But I watched that. And that's what always, she never quit. She just never quit, and then my sister, my mom died at 49. So in March of 2012, shootings in August 2012, in March 2012, my older sister dies. Dies at 50. So Elaine had multiple myeloma. So the average rate for multiple myeloma is like 2 to 3 years. And my sister lasted 5. And she did the whole stem cell replacement stuff, all that. And I watched my sister battle like Marciano, man, just never. And all that stuff stuck in my head. If she can do this today, there's nothing that's going to happen in my life that's going to stop me from doing one more thing. And you know as well as I do, our biggest competitor, our biggest breaker is our brain.
Yep.
Your brain can make you do unimaginable things, but both good and bad. And one of the most unimaginable is just stopping. And I'm not a believer in stopping. And now more so, now more than ever, I realize all those times, growing up on East Fifth and running from big guys or out fighting big guys because that's the way it was going to be.
Right.
Every step of the way, I don't know why I remember this, 3rd grade. Mini me, right? This is at the time that, you remember the punt, pass, and kick competition?
Absolutely. PAL, Police Athletic League, used to send us.
Exactly, right? So my Mrs. McIntyre, 3rd grade teacher, is handing out the applications. And I raised my hand and she goes, "Why do you want one?" And I say, "Because I want to do this." And she laughed in my face and put it on the desk. I came in Monday with the 2nd place trophy on the desk.
Yeah.
Because it was another one of those things that.
Give me a reason. Yeah.
Right. You're telling me I can't compete? No, that's not going to happen. We even asked the neighbor kid. I don't know why all this stuff comes back. We asked the neighbor kid for his tee, right? Because it's punt, pass, kick. And he wouldn't give it to me. So we didn't have one. And I remember he took me out to the field and took a bent up beer can. And that's what we used for a kicking tee. And it worked. But it was that again, that's all that stuff
that's a mental capacity to move beyond. Yeah, it's the depth of that, of what we can do beyond. Our body wants to stop. Like it says this is enough, right? Preservation of life, and how do you build through preparation and become more resilient to push beyond that, no matter what life throws at you. And I mean, at that time, what an incredible foreshadowing to what was about to go down. And you hear it not just in law enforcement, I hear it more so, but there are guys willing to put in the time every day to help each other make us better, because let's just face it, there's not enough resources for us to be at the level we need to be at to always
absolutely.
perform.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the agency, no matter how big, how small, they're never going to be able to provide enough. There becomes an onus on the individual that says, I want to take my career to the next level. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because, you get the mentality a lot of, well, if they're not paying for it, I'm not going.
Right.
And, to what cost? There's a cost to that. And,
yes.
and maybe that day never comes for you. But are you willing to take that risk, And I don't want to take that risk.
Yeah, but Stephen, you know this yourself. It doesn't have to be getting shot. It could be, it could be anything. And I think sometimes that gets lost as well. Is whether it's your marriage, that marriage ain't easy. Do you know what I mean? And there's guys who pull the plug on that just because it's work. And you're like,
you're right.
All these things. And I think it's a habit. Quitting is a habit. Pushing yourself is a habit. It's just, you're always trying and make good habits. And it doesn't always work out. This is not there's no perfect storybook endings, but, at the end of the day, for me, I would love that when my days come and I'm gone, that somebody looks back and says, you know what, I remember that guy said, I don't even remember his name, but he talked like a freaking gangster muppet. But that guy said, man, there's no point in giving up. There's no prizes for giving up. This has nothing even to do with honor, but I know I can look at myself in the mirror, and whether it's being a parent, now being a husband, and I'm a better husband than I was before, but it's always being better than I was, and that's the win.
That's good. Yeah. 100%. That's really good. I think at the end of no matter where we go and what we talk about, that has to be it. Is, am I constantly trying to move the needle to be better? And do I have the tools and the capacity to understand, hey, what is the next thing that makes me better, right? And those are big questions that you have to ask about your own life. And I'd love for you to just take us into, if you would, the actual day of the shooting. And I know everybody listening to this, they wear everything, all this fortitude that you have within you, and it came from somewhere, and it was tested at a point. And that's what I'd love for you to take a few minutes and walk us through just that day and you being dispatched to the temple, if you would take a couple minutes to share that.
Absolutely. So it's obviously August 5th, 2012, Sunday, my off day, by the way. I have two sergeants working. One's away on vacation. The other one, his son was graduating ROTC or something. So we flip days, and being in the business, you flip all the time. And I'm in ahead because my honeymoon is coming up in 10 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. I'll work for you this Sunday. You can work for me one of my vacation days. And that's all good. Go to work. I got 7 guys working, which was a little bit odd because it was a really nice day. We have 5 as a minimum, but we had some training we had to do. It was just watching these we call them roll call videotapes, just case law stuff. Mm-hmm. So I talk to my guys before we're going to stay in right out of roll call. I'll go out on the road. As soon as they're done, we're going to flip flop, and by 11 o'clock we should be all done with training. So, hey, so many things in your life come down to the tiniest thing. So I'm driving on this road. It's Nicholson Road, and it comes up to a T intersection with Puch Road. There is no reason on earth to make a left or a right. It's just, we've all done it. Just, it is. It's a Sunday morning. There's not a lot going on. Basically you're driving for dollars, just going through everything.
Yep.
So I make the left. And like 30 seconds later, call comes in, possible fight at the temple. So I hit the lights and siren. I start heading up there. The next guy who's going to arrive, where I could tell where he's coming from, and we'll probably get there about the same time. But be that as it may, I keep rolling. Then it gets upgraded to possible shots. And then once more to the shots fired. Guy with white male with a white T-shirt. I get there, shut my lights and siren off right before I get in the drive. Now where the temple is, it's right on a state highway, but it's set off probably about 1/10 of a mile. And the way that it's laid out from the roadway, you can't even see the roof of the building.
Okay.
You have to drive up a little hill, and then at the crest of the hill, that's when you could see the building and the parking lot. So just like that, drive up, scan, I could see it looks like one body down to my left up against a retaining wall that goes to an industrial park just to the north. So I don't see anybody, I don't hear anything. Drive up, get out of the car. check on what I thought was one. It turns out it was two. They were brothers, but the one had laid on top of the other one. So all I could see was one head, a large body, and because it was Sunday, think of it as mass. They had robes on. Both these guys were priests. So I call it out. I got somebody down, give me an ambulance, and just come in right behind me. There's only one exit, one ingress, egress. So as soon as I get off the mic, I take like 2 steps and I see a guy come out the front of the temple. And he goes to his left. So he's actually jogging away from me. I can't see anything in his hands, can't see anything other than on his hip is either a cell phone case or a holster. Now, the distance is about 45 yards. Mm-hmm. There are other cars parked in the parking lot, so I can't see his whole outline the whole time, right? That, if you're looking through people while you're sitting in a chair in a room and somebody walks through, it's like that. You see some, you don't see others, right? So I yell, I don't have enough to shoot him. There is nothing, to me, there's nothing odd that somebody's running away from a place that might be some shooting, right?
Yeah.
I know I got enough to hold him. So I yell, police, and all of a sudden he's running, and this kills me, man. It almost literally and figuratively. This is 40 yards away. He's running away from me. I'm moving. He raises his right arm up, does not look, and throws one shot in my general direction. He hits me right in the jaw. Bullet goes down my throat, hits my spine and bounces, and it's right behind my carotid artery now. But it felt like a good smack, like somebody took a good whack at you. Yeah. So there's cars there. I get behind the car, get behind the engine block, right? The good cover, check myself. I didn't know how bad I was hit. I just knew I was bleeding. And the funny thing is, right at that moment, I'm thinking, shit, now I'm in a gunfight. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, well, let's get it on. So I started looking underneath. I'm looking for feet. There's still more shots coming. But again, if you think of it this way, you're looking at another person. He's running, not looking around. He's running to your right. So where are you going to look? I look to my right? He's going for a reason.
Yeah.
Long story short, I'm behind the car, check myself for 10 seconds. And then I'm realizing I can't see him and shots are still coming. So I'm like, I got to get off the X. So I step out, stand up, step out in front of the car, both arms out in front of me. And he had actually stopped after he took the shot and flanked back. So when I come out, he's now at my 7. So he's not directly behind me. He's just off a hair. And the next shot comes and he shoots my thumb off.
Coming right across your shoulder, I guess, almost, or in front?
I have the gun sticking out in front of me. So, and I'm sure you've seen this a lot in what you do. Guns get shot a lot.
Yeah.
What people see. So, yeah, he hits. My thumb freaking explodes, man. That gun goes flying. I'm looking at the end of my thumb. I can see the bone. Everything slows. And it's just like this big spray. And honest to God, on my mom, and I don't take that lightly, the first thing in my head is, oh, shit, that's going to leave a mark. And see it on camera, but there ain't much of a thumb left. Keep shooting. He hit me in the upper arm, hits me in my leg, it blasts into my femur, takes my leg down. So I'm like, I got to get some cover here. So I go, there's a car right there, shimmy around that way, stick my vest out. He walks by, blam, 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 hits me a couple times in the vest. And then all of a sudden, there's no noise. It's just stone cold quiet, man. And it's the only time I get a break, and I'm like, I take a breath. I close my eyes just for a second. As soon as I close my eyes, I see my wife Ann's face. That's when I'm like, I am not going out on a parking lot. That is not happening. I got to get my ass back to my squad. I'm going to run them over. There's a whole long story with the long gun, but the lock broke. It works every day except the day.
That day.
And Murphy's Law, right?
As it would
At
be.
any rate, I'm under the car, and in my head, I'm like, all right, get prepared, get going. And when I roll out from the car, and in my head, I'm under the car for like, I don't know, 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. When I roll out, that quiet had been him going, bam, 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 click. So he just ran out of ammo, drops magazine. When I roll out, he's putting a fresh magazine. And it just starts, man, boom, 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 boom. So the way this is going is I'm looking up at him and I'm crab walking backwards, right? So I'm on my hands and my heels and my ass, and I'm walking backwards. And I make this point so everybody fully understands this. I cannot say everybody, but the large majority of people who have planned and prepped for an active shooter event are not going to be upset. This is business. And you need to get that through your head. They are in complete control of themselves because they've thought about this endlessly. They have gone through every motion endlessly. So this is fine for them. Because when I'm looking up at him, man, nothing, just dead. He might as well have a ham sandwich in the other hand. And for whatever reason, he's just lighting me up with one hand. So I'm like, bang, I'm moving back. He's still hitting me. Now I'm like, this is going too slow. I'm going to low crawl like I did in the service, flip over, and I'm going in. Because my mindset is I got to get to the car. Mm-hmm. The only thing, if I can get to the car, I'm going to run him over, but something good is going to happen to me. So as I'm going in me some more, and then the final shot happens, and that hits basically the round part, like where your trap is.
Yeah.
Okay. And because he's like 6'4", and he's shooting down at an angle, the round actually just skims my vest and goes into the back of my head. And it enters my skull and just wipe out. Pancakes me flat. My hearing's gone. It's so loud. It's so bright. And that was the only time I thought, man, I'm in a little bit of trouble. What I didn't know was my backup had just arrived. And then they got into a gunfight. Sam winds up shooting them. Bad guy goes down and he kills himself. So while Sam is engaged with him, mm-hmm. I shake it off and start crawling again.
Jeez.
And I get to the back of this truck, and Sam comes and Mike Schultz. And so I figured if this guy lights me up this bad, I know he killed what I thought was one guy. I can't imagine what he did in the temple. So I told him, go in. I didn't think I was that bad. So I told him, going to temple. Mike looks down at me. He's like, bullshit. Picks me up, gets me back in the squad. And in the back of the squad, the only thing I'm thinking is I have to control my breathing. Because if I start yelling, screaming, getting out of control, these are all my guys. So if I'm out of control, this is going to go sideways really quickly. And the other part of that is I know, that they asked me where I was hit. And I'm telling you, the hand, the neck, the leg, the back. And I'm knowing if I don't keep my blood pressure down, keep my breathing down, things could go bad. Yeah. And unfortunately for me, we already had the ambulance staged. So they got me over to the rig, and we were over at Freighter, which is a level 1 trauma center.
Okay.
In like 12 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
So that happened started at 10:26. It was all over in 6 minutes. And they got me to the hospital. They came, got my wife, and got to talk with me before I went in to get operated on. And then I was on a table for like 12, 13 hours the first time. So I think I had altogether, like, before I got out, I was in for 17 days. I think I had like 5, 6 surgeries while I was there.
My goodness. And it was a handgun that he was using, wasn't it?
Yep, Springfield XD 9mm, and he had Federal Premium 147 grain jacketed hollow point.
My goodness. Yeah, devastating rounds.
5 mags, 1 thing of hearing protection, and a speed loader.
Jeez.
So he was prepped. He had been there before. Shooting was on a Sunday. He had gone the week prior. He had gone on both a Tuesday and Thursday, and invited him in because he seemed like he was interested in the Sikh faith. So, they were being hospitable like they always are.
Yeah.
And in the end, I killed 7 and wounded another 2.
My goodness. Yeah, just the devastation. I mean, it's just evil. I mean, when a monster does something like that, it's just evil.
Exactly. His uncle, he lived with his uncle a little while in Colorado, and his uncle was a state trooper and then had put himself through law school, and now he's a prosecutor in the Denver area. So they gave me a holler. My chief called me. He goes, "Hey, the uncle's up here and he wants to talk to you." And I go, "No." I said, "I don't have any hard feelings. He didn't do it. And I don't want to listen to somebody say, we didn't see this coming. It's okay. I don't blame his family. He's a grown man. He was in the Army for 7 years and, bounced around. So he's a grown man. I don't fault his, how he grew up for this act. This is just his ideology that took him that way, and, his whole mental health and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I just didn't want to get into someone telling me how sorry they felt for me. And I'm not going to do that.
Not a path to go down. Well, Brian, one, I appreciate you taking the time to share that event. How has life changed, and what have you learned over the amount of distance? Like, I'm sure I can only assume there's, phases that you go through, but being this far removed, I mean, with that, there were many acknowledgments that were well-deserved, not only from your department and from the federal government, the state governments. Obviously, those are all well-deserved. How can you maybe sum it up for us in a way that those that are listening, there's a lot of resilient conversations that can be unpacked in something like this, but how did you get through that emotionally, mentally? And I can only imagine the conversations that had to happen with your family. Like it just that being a father like that, I can't even necessarily put my finger on that, of how you decide in your mind that I'm moving through this and I'm not going to die after this.
I'll be honest with you. As soon as I woke up and I saw my wife there, and when I asked her and she said I wasn't going to die, then I was like, all right, then now. The only thing I would caution, and the cautions may not be the right verbiage, but I had a plan B. Okay. I was in school. I was finishing my thesis for my master's. Mm-hmm. And my plan, I was one class away from a professional certification through FEMA, because that was my thought, is I'm going to retire in about 3-4 years and I'm going to go into emergency management. Mm-hmm. And so that was my B, but I never had a C. And that was probably the hardest part.
Okay.
All of this was, now what do I do? I've been wearing a gun since 1980. And now what do I do? And, I can remember people come up, hey, yeah, you must go on the road and talk about this all the time. And I'm like, in the beginning, no, nobody ever asked. So what wound up happening was I get a call from my buddy Matt Davis. So Matt at the time owned Armor Express, and they were the guys who made my vest. His dad invented body armor. So he gives me a holler and he's like, you have any interest in going out to the SHOT Show in January? And I'm like, yeah, I've never been to Vegas. I'm like, they're paying the way. So I'm like, all right, even my wife was like, yeah, go do something.
Yeah. So
I go out and we're talking. Matt's a young guy, but he's a very astute guy. And we're talking about just stuff. And he goes, hey, we gave you that plaque with, for your safe thing. And I go, and I just looked at him, I go, you know how many plaques I got? And he's like, what? I go, I could build a damn house with all the plaques I got now. and he looked and he goes, well, what do you need? And I said, somebody to talk to. I said, because there aren't a lot of guys out there who've been shot. So if you've never been shot, Stephen, we can have a conversation, but you really don't know where I'm coming from. You can imagine it, you can commiserate, you can empathize, but you don't know it exactly. And so we were talking and he says, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. And he said, do you want to run the SAVES program for Armor Express? So what I do is I help take care of officers who've been shot, stabbed, car accident, who wear Armor Express vests. Nothing more than just hey, take care of your family first. Attention to your kids, because all this stuff, when this happened, in my head, I'm like, poor me. But I never looked at anybody else and said, oh my God, I can't imagine what they're going through as well. And it took a little bit. And then you really realize, like, man, this is a team effort here. This is not all those other times, that was me taking the effort. I'm getting through this. There's some things, though, that you can't do that shit by yourself. And I mean that literally, because I got shot 3 times in my left hand, once in my right. I had it cast all the way up. I had a feeding tube in. I had a trachea tube in. And you can't do anything for yourself. And that's when you realize, oh my God, all those times I didn't take the time to explain stuff to my wife. This is the way things happen. That's all on me. I didn't communicate the what ifs. And now this was all just thrown at her. And she came through in flying colors, man. She was nothing short of a godsend. But if you're looking at this and when you're looking at yourself, you also have to look at your pack, your whatever you want to call them, your group, but your family. Although you have to look at that as well, because whatever happens to you may affect them 10 times more than it does you. It has nothing to do with strength or weaknesses. It just has to do with people are different. People have been through a variety of things that you don't know about. So they handle things differently. Some people won't shut up and other people won't talk at all. So, but that was bad. And then the funny thing is my wife is more of an introvert. And everybody's coming up after the shooting. Oh, you know what happened to my husband? You know what happened here? You know what happened? And she's like, but you're just telling me what happened to you. You're not saying, how'd you get by? What did you do? And then, she's like me, like, I'll take care of it. She did. But the greater concept of all this is, no matter how much you are self-reliant, there's a crew there that look after you, that love you, that need you, that you have to pay attention to. And that really is what came about is, you know what? I need to focus more on what's really important. And if you're doing this job I implore you, you give it everything you got when you're there. But when you're done, be done. When you're home, be home. Be dad, be husband, be wife, be a person, not just I'm a cop. You got to be a person as well. Because I hate to say this, and I bring this up all the time, I shouldn't have been in this position. 2010, I got hurt in a training accident and screwed my back up bad. And I was told I could medically retire. And I could have, but I didn't want to go out that way. I didn't want to go out from an injury. You don't get to say when you get out all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I apologize for cursing, but I always use this because you don't get to pick when bad shit happens. It picks you. So there's a lot of things that you have to have in your arsenal.
Yeah.
Make things right. And a good relationship is one. Good communications the other. You know, resiliency, maybe cognitive resiliency, all those things come into play. But those are things that have to be honed every day. And I always use that. You're not, you know, if you've never been in a fist fight and you're just getting on this job, I will give you my address and I'll come to my house and I will kick your ass on my lawn because I'm going to stop. The bad guy isn't. And if you haven't been in that position to understand this is where my ceiling is, shame on you.
Yeah.
And all those things are what really play into, success.
Yeah.
And
you got to put yourself in those situations. Yeah. You've got to be there, and it's not going to mirror exactly, but, don't be afraid to put yourself in a bad spot because it's going to be a lot worse when you're out there.
We're doing ground fighting one time, and we're hitting and bang, I hit and I break my pinky, and they're like, "Stop!" And I'm like, "No, we're not done." Because in real life, there is no timeout. Finish the drill, and then I'll get my pinky taken care of. And everybody's like, why? And I'm like, but you're missing the point. This is exactly where you test. Exactly, because if it happened on the street, I would know, okay, that hurt, but I can still go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, don't soften the training.
Right. Exactly. And as a boss, and I did this at every training we attended, I watched every one of my guys. Because I wanted to know who had strength in one area, who needed work in an area. And we all think we're great at everything, but, that's not, you do have to truly take stock of your own strengths and weaknesses.
100%. Well said. Well, Brian, I know I'm already pushing on our time here. How do people get in touch with you? How do they connect with you? And do you offer trainings? What are you doing right now? How everybody out there that hasn't heard your story, I'm sure has a lot to sit and think about after this conversation, as they should, as you should with any good conversation. But how do people connect with you and what you're doing? And
I go around, and it's, for the most part, it's agencies will get a hold of me and say, can you come out?
Great.
I'm in Des Moines, Iowa next week. So there's like 4 different departments that I'll talk to when I'm there. Otherwise, just hit me up on Facebook, BAM Training, or I'm on Instagram, BAM.training.Murphy.
There we go. Hey, I will have it all linked up in the show notes that everybody can connect with immediately after, whether it's on the YouTube channel or when they pull it up on their podcast. It'll all be linked up that they can connect with you. And man, what do we miss besides a whole lot? But is there any final thought that you can send? And maybe if you could just speak for a minute before we sign off here to those guys doing the job right now and facing what they're facing.
And so I can't imagine, and I don't pretend to imagine, on the darkest days when I was on the job, that the pendulum always swings. But I do get to go around, I do get to talk to people, And there's such a misgiving going on right now. So many people are really in favor of law enforcement and support law enforcement. Unfortunately, the media spotlight is not on them. And the truth of the matter is, you have to know your reason. Why is it that you want to be a cop? Why is it that you want to do a good job, and stick to that? It's a funny thing. After I got shot, I started reading a lot of Stoicism. Mm-hmm. I'm sure if you ever watched the movie Gladiator, you heard of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
And Marcus Aurelius at one point is the most powerful man on earth. But even he said, the only thing I can control is myself. And that's what you need to focus on. Is people are going to say what they say. People are going to do what they do. The only thing you control is you. Control yourself always. Breathe. And understand what you're doing is good. I still think it's the most honorable profession on the face of the earth. And if people want to nitpick, they just don't know the numbers. And to send them my way, I will be happy to school them on the truth in that. But for the time being, stay the course. Godspeed. God bless you for what you do. Because if it wasn't you, there's nobody else out there banging and yelling who can or would do your job.
Yeah.
The family, love yourself, and take care of each other.
Man, thank you. That's a good word, Brian, and I think that's appropriate to stop our conversation now, because I hope in the future we might be able to pick it up and maybe go in depth with some other stuff as well. But man, it was a true honor to hear the story right from you, and even more so, if you forgive me if I not to brush over it, but even in the beginning, speaking and hearing you, because in order to I think appreciate the difficulty that men and women across this country and across this globe are experiencing, we have to understand some of the building blocks of that person's life and some of the things they've seen. And that is something that I look forward to have these longer conversations with people, to hear a little bit more than just maybe a isolated incident, but much broader picture.
And to be honest with you, you're the first one who's ever looked further. And I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for that, because, my life didn't start the moment I got shot.
Yeah,
I've been at it for a long time before that.
Absolutely. It sounds that way, man. You got so much experience, and just hearing your commitment to the training and your mindset then, I don't hear much of a different mindset now from you. What you were committed to as a young man, from hearing some of your story to even post-event, you're writing some really cool things into history and leaving a legacy for other officers, for other veterans, and for other people that have experienced a level of violent trauma that you went through. So, brother, I appreciate you, and thank you for taking this time to share with the audience today.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. If you need anything, you got my info. Give me a holler on.
You got it. You got it.
Be safe.
Well, thank you.